What if the reason you keep feeling outmatched is not because others are smarter, but because you're still playing by their rules? In a world filled with noise, ego, and constant competition, true advantage does not belong to the loudest voice or the fastest move. It belongs to the one who sees clearly, who acts without rush, who chooses what to ignore and what to master. Most people chase power by reacting. The Stoic finds power by refining their responses, by anchoring themselves in principles that do not waver when circumstances do. Imagine standing in the midst of tension and confusion, yet feeling unshaken. Not because life is easier, but because you've trained your inner fortress. That clarity, that sharpness of mind and strength of will is not born from luck. It's cultivated through practice, discipline, and a refusal to be ruled by impulse or praise. There are 7 timeless Stoic principles that, once understood and lived, make you unreadable, composed, and quietly unshakable. If you've ever felt the need to reclaim your edge without losing your soul, this is where it begins. Stay with us. The clarity you're searching for is already within reach. Number 1. Endure without announcing. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to talk about our struggles, to seek validation by sharing every hardship we face? In a world where expressing difficulties has become a norm, silence may seem unnatural, but the Stoics teach something radically different. They remind us that not every wound must be shown to the world, not every trial must be spoken aloud. There is strength in restraint. There is power in facing what's hard without advertising it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." The same principle applies to struggle. Don't explain it. Endure it. Let your actions speak where words would only stir emotion. Most people are quick to share their burdens, hoping the act of expression will lighten the load. But often, this only feeds the storm. When you keep repeating your troubles, you reinforce them in your own mind. You make them larger, more permanent than they ever needed to be. Imagine 2 men facing the same trial. One speaks of it constantly, hoping for sympathy, collecting nods from those around him. The other, quiet and steady, says nothing. He rises at dawn. He does his duty. He keeps his schedule. He works through his pain without complaint. Which of the 2 becomes stronger? Which of the 2 shapes his soul? The Stoic would say, the one who bears it without the need to be seen. In my own life, I remember a season when things were falling apart. A business had failed. A close friendship had fractured. Every part of me wanted to talk about it, to vent, to explain. But I stopped myself. I remembered the teachings of Epictetus. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. So I stayed silent. I did the next thing. I worked, read, trained. It didn't fix everything overnight, but something profound happened. I became more stable, more focused, and more confident in my own path. I wasn't seeking reassurance from others. I was building it within. This is not to say you should never speak to anyone about your struggles, but choose wisely. Speak not to complain, but to seek clarity or counsel. And even then, do so with purpose, not impulse. The problem with constantly verbalizing our difficulties is that we risk making our identity out of them. The Stoic path leads in the opposite direction, toward a self that is not defined by wounds, but by how it heals, quietly and deliberately. There is a kind of quiet that is not weakness, but dignity. When we choose to carry our challenges without seeking an audience, we create a sacred space within ourselves. A space where courage grows, where discipline becomes our ally, and where the soul is hardened like iron in fire. It's not the noise of our emotions that strengthens us, but the steadiness of our response. Seneca wrote, Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. But that strengthening requires friction. Silence becomes the forge. Each time you refrain from making your suffering the centerpiece of conversation, you give your inner fortitude room to grow. You stop feeding the flame of self-pity and start nurturing the root of resilience. The next time life hits you hard, resist the urge to broadcast it. Instead, get up, make your bed, do the work in front of you, hold your posture, breathe with control. This is what makes you strong. Not loud declarations of hardship, but the quiet discipline of continuing forward. You don't need the world to know your pain in order to rise above it. You only need to remember who you are without it. Because when you endure without applause, you train yourself to value what truly matters, not the reaction of others, but the development of character. Let each challenge sharpen you. Let each silent victory build a deeper sense of control. Let each unspoken difficulty become another layer in the foundation of your strength. The Stoic path is not about avoiding struggle. It's about mastering your response to it with steadiness, clarity, and purpose. And when you live like this, you don't just survive hardship, you transcend it. You stop seeking relief and start cultivating inner rule. That is what makes a person truly unshakable. Now, let us continue and uncover the next principle that separates the disciplined from the distracted. Number 2. Protect what's sacred. In a world that praises openness and oversharing, holding something back has become an act of rebellion. But to the Stoic, it is not rebellion, it is wisdom. Not every thought that enters your mind deserves to exit through your mouth. And not every secret that weighs on your soul is meant to be handed to another. Some things, the most sacred parts of you, are meant to be protected, not displayed. Seneca once said, "A man who has bared himself to everyone leaves himself at the mercy of anyone." When you reveal too much, you give others the ability to wound you in ways no enemy ever could. And strangely enough, it is often not your enemies who use your secrets against you, but those you once called friends. Not out of malice, perhaps, but out of carelessness. A secret that matters to you may be nothing more than gossip to someone else. There is a kind of strength in silence that no speech can match. To keep something private, not out of fear, but out of principle, is a sign of a disciplined mind. It shows that you are not controlled by impulse or by the hunger for recognition, but by inner order. The moment you hand someone a piece of your inner world, you also hand them a form of power. Use that power wisely. Withhold when you must. Share only when it serves a purpose greater than relief. This doesn't mean you should build walls around your life and trust no one, but you must first ask yourself, why am I sharing this? Is it for clarity or is it for comfort? Am I speaking to someone capable of carrying this weight? Or am I simply trying to unburden myself without considering the consequences? The Stoic approach is not to avoid connection, but to be deliberate with it. Choose those you confide in with the same care you would use to guard your home. I remember once trusting someone with a part of my story I had never spoken aloud. At the time, it felt like a moment of connection, even strength. But weeks later, that same truth was echoed back to me in a room where it did not belong. It wasn't shared with malice. It was shared casually, thoughtlessly. And in that moment, I learned something the hard way. When your secrets are treated like stories, they no longer belong to you. But here's where Stoicism shows its true power, not just in preventing pain, but in handling it when it comes. When your confidence is betrayed, don't fall into bitterness. Don't rage against the one who spoke. Instead, return to reason. You chose to share. The risk was yours. And now the lesson is yours as well. Learn from it. Adjust. Protect yourself with wisdom, not walls. This is the art of living with resilience. Epictetus reminds us, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Likewise, if someone misuses your trust, understand your role in placing that trust. Take responsibility, then move on without resentment. Your peace is not worth the cost of carrying outrage. Still, there are moments when revealing something true about ourselves can forge bonds that stand the test of time. Stoicism doesn't demand you live in isolation. It asks you to lead with discipline, share when it deepens virtue, when it strengthens a relationship built on mutual respect, when silence would damage what honesty could repair. But even then, do so with clarity, not desperation. A true friend doesn't just hear your secret, they protect it like their own. And if the day comes when your secret is exposed against your will, meet it with composure. Do not scramble to control how others see you. Return inward. Measure yourself by your actions, not by public opinion. You have not failed simply because someone failed you. Your worth is not reduced by their indiscretion. If anything, your ability to remain steady in the aftermath is the clearest evidence of your inner strength. So let your silence become a symbol of power, not shame. Let your discipline in choosing what to reveal and what to protect define the kind of person you're becoming. The Stoic path is not about hiding, it's about holding. Holding truth with care. Holding boundaries with reason. Holding yourself to a higher standard than the world expects. As we move forward, remember this. The quieter you become, the more you begin to hear what truly matters. And the fewer people who know your every thought, the more control you have over your own peace. Now let us continue and explore the next Stoic principle that sharpens your mind and shields your dignity. Number 3, let actions speak. There's a quiet kind of power in doing something well and saying nothing about it. The world today constantly urges us to announce, display, and prove our worth. But the Stoic walks a different path. He builds in silence. He sharpens his skill without applause. He lets the results speak, not the ego. To refrain from speaking about your achievements is not to deny them. It's to recognize their true place in your life. Your progress is for your own soul, not for the approval of the crowd. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the fruit of this life is good character and acts for the common good. Not praise, not admiration, but integrity. Think of the man who wakes early each day to train. Not for show. Not for an audience, but because it is his practice. It centers him. It prepares him for life's demands. Or the woman who studies deep into the night, not to impress, but because knowledge shapes her virtue. These people do not seek recognition because they have already found something greater, peace with themselves. Let me tell you a story. In a small town, there lived a man named Thomas. He was known to many as the quiet gardener. He had no titles, no grand introductions. He simply tended his land with care, day after day. Over time, his garden flourished, lush trees, radiant flowers, food enough to feed others. Visitors would pass by, wondering how such beauty came to be. But Thomas never explained. He never boasted. He never pointed to the soil and said, "Look what I've done." He just continued his work. And those who observed him learned something profound. Excellence doesn't need a voice. It needs consistency. That is what the Stoic teaches. Live well, do your work, improve yourself, and leave the noise behind. The man who constantly speaks of his success has already traded it for approval. But the one who remains focused and silent retains the most precious reward, control of his own character. There is a great freedom in not needing to be seen. When you stop seeking acknowledgement, you begin to act with clarity. No longer do you shape your choices to be noticed. You shape them to be right. You don't study so others will admire you. You study because wisdom refines your soul. You don't lead to be praised. You lead because others depend on your strength. That is what it means to live for virtue, not applause. It's easy to talk about what you've done. It's much harder to keep building in silence. But that silence protects you. It shields your energy from the shifting opinions of others. It allows you to keep your attention on the task, not on the response. The more you talk about success, the more you risk becoming attached to how it sounds rather than how it feels to earn it. Seneca said, "Let us not envy those who boast of their successes, nor seek to imitate them. Let us be content to grow strong without spectators." This is the foundation of inner freedom, doing what is excellent even when no one claps. Because what matters most is not who sees you, but who you become when no one is watching. Even when you achieve something remarkable, practice restraint. Celebrate in private. Keep your pride inward, like a flame that warms you, not a torch you wave to attract attention. There is a quiet dignity in being unknown and competent, in being the kind of person others respect without even knowing why. You do not owe anyone your resume. You owe yourself your focus. Speak less of what you've done and do more of what aligns with who you aim to be. Your deeds will echo louder than your words ever could. So, let your growth be your own. Let your progress unfold without the need to broadcast it. The strength you build in silence becomes unshakable because it's rooted in discipline, not performance. That is the path of the Stoic, not to shine in the eyes of others, but to stand firm in the eyes of your own reason. Now stay with me as we move forward and uncover the next principle that will teach you how to sharpen your presence without ever raising your voice. Number 4, move without warning. The wisest strategies are often executed in silence. Like a seasoned chess player who makes their move with quiet precision, the Stoic advances through life without broadcasting intentions. Not out of fear, not out of secrecy, but because silence protects focus. When you keep your next step to yourself, you create a space where clarity can thrive, free from the distractions of outside opinion and the temptations of premature celebration. There's a kind of discipline in withholding your plans that many overlook. Most people speak of what they're going to do before they do it. They seek affirmation, applause, or comfort. But once those words are spoken, the energy behind them often begins to fade. Talking feels like progress, but talking is not doing. The Stoic knows this, and so he remains quiet, not because he lacks ambition, but because he respects the process. Think of the farmer. He doesn't tell the village what seeds he's planted each morning. He simply returns to the field. He tends the soil. He waters the roots. He guards the crop. And when harvest comes, it speaks for itself. That's the way of the Stoic. Let your actions reveal the direction you've taken, not your words. Let your results introduce your path, not your promises. I remember a young man who had great ambition. He spoke often of what he was going to build. He had vision, passion, a list of plans that impressed anyone who listened. But over time, something odd happened. The more he talked, the less he did. Every conversation became another performance, and before long, his ideas began to gather dust. Not because he lacked talent, but because he had scattered his focus in too many directions, each one diluted by the need to be seen. In contrast, another man I knew said very little. While others explained what they were about to achieve, he quietly read, quietly worked, quietly executed. And then one day, it was done. No warning, no prelude, just a result that could not be ignored. When asked why he never shared his plans, he smiled and said, "Because they weren't ready to be spoken." That is the mindset of a person ruled by principle, not approval. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't waste what remains of your life in speculating about others, unless it benefits the common good. It distracts you from doing what's most important, being the master of yourself." The same is true for our own plans. When we speak too soon, we invite opinions, doubts, and expectations that cloud the clarity we need to act decisively. By keeping your intentions close, you protect your momentum, you conserve your energy, you stop seeking agreement and begin building strength. Each unspoken step becomes a contract between you and your purpose, untouched by the interference of the world. But this is not about hiding or deception. It's about autonomy. It's about owning the direction of your life without handing the steering wheel to public opinion. The Stoic moves in silence, not to be mysterious, but to be free. And should your plans be questioned, you owe no defense. Your work will speak. Your consistency will explain, and if you fail, you'll do so with dignity, without the burden of broken promises or shallow justifications. This discipline of silence, of keeping your path within you until it is paved, nurtures not only your progress, but your peace. It reminds you that the journey is yours, and yours alone. No one else needs to approve it. No one else needs to understand it. So before you speak of your next move, pause. Ask yourself, am I sharing this to strengthen it or to escape the discomfort of holding it alone? If the answer is the latter, remain still. Stay silent. Trust the strength of quiet resolve. And if you've ever felt the urge to speak before the work is done, let this be your anchor. True movement happens in silence. Type stillness in the comments if you've been there. And if this message is helping you realign, subscribe now so you never miss the next step on your Stoic path. Let's move on and explore the next principle that teaches us how to command power, not through attention, but through presence. Number 5. Master the impulse to judge. One of the clearest signs of strength is restraint. In a world where it's common to speak about others behind their backs, to judge, to comment, to speculate, silence becomes a rare and noble discipline. The Stoic does not waste his breath on matters that do not concern him. He does not sharpen his tongue at the expense of another. Instead, he sharpens his character. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." This is not a call to become blind to people's faults, but a reminder to place your energy where it matters most, on your own development. When you talk about others, especially when they're not present, you surrender part of your focus to what is beyond your control. You trade reflection for distraction. You risk feeding your pride by picking apart someone else's life rather than refining your own. Consider this. When a person speaks ill of another, what do they reveal? Not just the flaws of the person they describe, but the state of their own mind. The one who gossips seeks superiority by comparison, but superiority built on tearing down others is fragile and hollow. It needs constant feeding. The Stoic builds a different kind of strength, quiet, inward, and free from dependence on comparison. I once knew a man named Elias. In every room, others would talk. Some would praise, others would complain. But Elias would listen. And when pressed for his opinion on someone else's failures or flaws, he would simply say, "That's their path. I have enough to walk my own." He was not cold, he was focused. His silence wasn't indifference, it was clarity. He understood that every word he spoke was a reflection of his values, and he chose to speak only what was necessary and only when it served a higher purpose. Refraining from judgment doesn't mean you approve of everything. It means you've decided not to be ruled by opinions. It means you see others as fellow travelers, each carrying their own burdens, making their own mistakes. And just like you, they're trying, often imperfectly, to find their way. When you truly embrace that, compassion grows. And where compassion grows, gossip withers. There is a hidden cost to speaking about others. It fragments your peace. Every time you dwell on someone else's flaws, your own character becomes a little more scattered. You distance yourself from your own work, your own discipline, your own purpose. Epictetus said, "It is impossible to learn that which one thinks they already know." When you speak of others as if you fully understand their story, you close the door to your own learning. You lose the humility that growth depends on. The Stoic life is one of inward attention. Instead of asking, "Why does he act that way?" ask, "Why do I feel the need to speak about it?" Instead of wondering how someone else has failed, reflect on where you still fall short. This redirection is not weakness, it is power. The power to govern yourself instead of being pulled into the endless web of opinion and distraction. And sometimes, silence is not only the wiser path, it is the kinder one. Not everyone needs your commentary. Not every mistake needs your label. Let people struggle in private, just as you hope to when it's your turn. Let your words uplift, or let them rest. This kind of restraint leads to greater peace, fewer regrets, and deeper strength. It clears the noise from your mind and makes space for clarity, for calm, and for growth. It's not about pretending to be virtuous. It's about choosing to live with intention. So the next time your mind reaches for a judgment or your tongue prepares a remark, pause. Ask yourself, will this serve anything greater than my pride? If not, stay quiet. And in that quiet, you will find something rare, a self that no longer needs to define others in order to feel steady. Let's continue and discover the next Stoic principle that helps you cultivate influence not by dominating others, but by mastering your own presence. Number 6. Give without telling. The Stoic does not need a stage. He does not seek applause for doing what is right. He does not decorate his virtue with stories designed to impress. Instead, he acts not for praise, not for recognition, but because right action is its own reward. Just as the sun gives warmth without announcing its power, the Stoic gives quietly, consistently, and without the need to be seen. In today's world, where nearly every good deed is photographed, posted, and praised, true humility has become rare. But Stoicism invites us to return to something deeper, to act rightly because it aligns with our nature, not because it boosts our image. A good deed loses none of its value by remaining unseen. In fact, it often gains something far greater: purity. Let me share with you a simple story. In a quiet town, there lived a man named Stephen. He worked a modest job and lived a life that appeared from the outside ordinary. But every week he showed up at a local center to serve the homeless. No announcements, no social media posts, no speeches. He simply showed up, rolled up his sleeves, and did what needed to be done. When asked why, his answer was straightforward: because it's the right thing to do. That was it. No performance. No virtue signaling, just action aligned with principle. Stephen lived like a candle, silent, steady, and bright. His deeds spoke not in words, but in the way others felt when they were around him. You didn't need to know what he had done to feel his presence. You sensed integrity. You sensed calm. And that's the true mark of someone shaped by inner discipline rather than outer approval. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But there's a second truth here. No man is more dependent than he who needs others to validate his every act of kindness. That man hasn't found virtue, he's found a transaction. He gives only to get something back. The Stoic gives with no such expectation. He understands that virtue is not a currency, it's a way of being. When you do something kind and no one knows, no one claps, no one acknowledges it, can you still be content? If the answer is yes, then you've touched something real. You've entered the realm of quiet strength. This kind of giving refines you. It builds your character without inflating your ego. It draws you inward, where your intentions matter more than the outcome. There's also a practical strength in keeping your good deeds private. When you don't speak of them, no one can distort them. No one can question your motives. Your peace stays intact because your action was never about perception, it was about principle. You become the kind of person who can be trusted because your values are not on display for approval, they are embedded in how you live. And over time, people feel this difference, not because you talk about your kindness, but because you carry yourself with a quiet dignity that doesn't need to be explained. This is how trust is built, not through words, but through the quiet evidence of consistent action. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. So too with your good deeds. Don't describe them, live them. Let the energy you bring into a room speak for you. Let the way you treat the unnoticed, the unseen, the powerless define who you are, not what you choose to showcase." So next time you do something good, ask yourself, am I content to let this moment remain private? Am I strong enough to do what's right and walk away without sharing the story? If you are, you've already won a far greater reward than any applause can give, freedom from needing to be admired. Now let us continue forward and explore the final Stoic principle, the one that ties all the others together and reveals the path to becoming quietly unshakable. Number 7, build without broadcasting. There is a quiet strength in keeping your direction to yourself, not because you fear judgment, but because you value the stillness that focus requires. The Stoic does not need to declare where he's headed, he simply walks. With purpose, with discipline, with clarity that needs no witness. We live in a time where announcing your next step often feels like the step itself. Share a plan, and you receive encouragement. Describe a goal, and people nod with approval. But here's the danger. That approval becomes the reward. The plan loses its sharpness, and before long, the momentum you once had is replaced by the comfort of being admired for something you haven't yet done. Stoicism reminds us to bring our attention back to what is here, what is now. The present moment is the only place action can happen. When we speak too early of what we intend to do, we open the door to distraction, not only from others' opinions, but from our own shifting motivations. Talking too much about our plans often tricks the mind into believing progress has been made. But the Stoic is not concerned with appearances. He is concerned with action. Consider the story of Elena, a woman with a fierce vision for her craft. She had a dream to build something of meaning, a small school to teach underserved youth. But instead of speaking endlessly about it, she worked quietly, year after year, saving money, refining her ideas, building partnerships slowly and deliberately. When the school finally opened, many were surprised. "Why didn't you say anything?" they asked. She smiled and replied, "Because I was busy doing it." That is what it means to move with quiet confidence, To let your results arrive without prelude. Not to be mysterious, but to be rooted in what matters. When you don't share your plans, they remain unshaped by external expectation. They stay yours, protected, focused, alive. Keeping your path private also cultivates self-reliance. You stop relying on others to validate the direction you've chosen. You learn to walk with yourself, to hold your own counsel, and to trust your discipline more than the reactions of others. This is not isolation. It's independence, the kind that strengthens you from within. Of course, there are exceptions. A trusted mentor or collaborator may need to understand your direction, but even then, share with care. Not to be seen, not to be praised. Only when the sharing serves the work itself. Marcus Aurelius warned us, never regard something as doing you good if it makes you betray a trust, or lose your sense of shame, or makes you show a hatred for somebody, or a suspicion, or a desire for things best hidden. Even a spoken plan, if shared without care, can draw you off course, can bend your intention toward approval rather than toward the virtue of completion. By keeping your plans close, you also become more adaptable. When a plan changes, as they often do, you are not bound by the image you painted for others. You are free to pivot, to adjust, to grow in silence. There's no need to explain. You haven't promised anything. You've simply stayed in motion, responding to life with wisdom rather than pride. And perhaps most importantly, when you speak less of your plans, you leave space for deeper intention. You're not performing the idea of progress. You're living it. With every quiet step, every disciplined decision, you shape something real, something no opinion can inflate or destroy. This is how the Stoic builds, slowly, privately, inwardly. Let your work grow underground like roots. Let your purpose deepen through action, not announcement. And when the fruit of your labor begins to appear, you won't need to say a word. The world will see it. And more importantly, you will know, without a doubt, that it was built not for applause, but for meaning. Now that you've heard all 7 principles, remember this: your silence is not emptiness. It is power, it is precision, it is freedom, and the path you walk, when walked with virtue, will always speak louder than the words you could have said. You've made it to the end, and that already says something rare about you. In a world that rewards noise and speed, you've chosen to slow down, to reflect, to sharpen yourself in silence. That alone is a kind of power most people never touch. Remember, the ability to outsmart others doesn't come from manipulation or performance. It comes from mastering the self, from seeing clearly when others are distracted, and from acting with principle when others chase praise. If this video gave you something to think about, a shift in how you see strength or success, consider subscribing. Not because you're expected to, but because this space is for those who are serious about building their inner world without needing the world's permission. And before you go, tell me in the comments which idea stayed with you the most. Just 2 or 3 words, something like quiet strength or strategic silence. You are not alone in this path, even when you walk it silently. And the next time you feel the urge to explain, to impress, or to announce your next move, come back here, watch the next video. Let it remind you that wisdom works best when no one sees it coming.